Governance is something that we ran on, and it's one of the core values of our office, and it shapes the work that we do every single day. I believe that that fundamentally the Congress is based on the conversations we have with our constituents. We believe you all have the greatest ideas and the solutions to our persistent problems in this country. So some of the things that we have been able to do in Congress, earlier this summer, we advanced $14.4 million in funding for 10 community projects that we submitted earlier in the spring. These 10 projects invest in the communities that were hit the hardest, both by the pandemic and the social unrest, by addressing joblessness, the food desert, housing insecurity, and access to healthcare. The projects that we funded include rebuilding the Hennepin Healthcare Clinic on East Lake Street, skills training for clean energy careers in North Minneapolis, sprinkler updates for the Minnesota Public Housing Authority that helps address what happened in Cedar Riverside when we lost a lot of elders in one of the public housings burning down. Funding for the Minneapolis in South Minneapolis, food business incubator at Northside Economic Opportunity Network, new recreational building in North Commons Park, updates to Sapathany Community Center, Brooklyn Center Health Initiatives, and funding for the Wadag Commons apartment in Seward that is going to be hopefully finished, and it will be an apartment complex that will have the ability to incorporate families that are in need of 2, 3, 4-bedroom apartments to live in. These projects still need to go through the Senate process, and so we will continue to fight for those dollars to come back to the district and continue to encourage Senator Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar in supporting the advancing of those 10 projects for Minnesota's 5th. Part of the spirit of co-governance is providing individual casework assistance to people and organizations in our district. I know some of you in the audience have already worked with our office on casework. This is one of the least known but most important services that our office provides to our constituents. When you are experiencing an issue with the federal government, my staff can submit an inquiry on your behalf to liaison with any federal agency. This is often for situations related to immigration delays, pending small business loans, child tax credit payments, stimulus payments, Social Security issues, which is outside of immigration, our top issue that we deal with, expediting passports, and so much more. Huh? Police funding, right? Big issue. No. If you have a current concern, or if you aren't sure that the issue could be helped by our office, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. If my office can't solve the problem directly, we will always do our best to connect with municipals that deal with that issue, or we can work with the state to be able to do that for you. Finally, I would like to highlight some of the things that we've been able to do since we've been home this past week. Last Friday, we were able to attend the official opening of 35W to 94 downtown to crosstown reconstruction project. After 4 years of dealing with closed roads and detours, after detour, I'm happy to say that the project is finally open and completed. I remember being a baby legislator in the Minnesota House and voting on this project, so it's really good to now be a congresswoman and see this project um, finalized. I also was able to stop by at some open streets. One of them was the West Broadway, and it was really great to see all of the families, local businesses, and nonprofits that gathered around in community and shared time with them. Earlier today, we were able to do a couple of events related to some of the work that we are doing in regards to the reconciliation legislation that we are passing. I was able Healthy Moms and Baby Summit. So that was really exciting to be part of that. And lastly, before we get to questions, I wanted to highlight the visit that I was able to do 2 weeks ago. Myself and a few of my colleagues in Congress were able to go up to Line 3, and we met with Indigenous leaders to hear from them personally about the lack of tribal consent and the impact this pipeline is having on their communities and the environment. After just experiencing our hottest summer to date, the climate crisis is worsening daily. This pipeline will produce the dirtiest fossil fuel on the planet and will cross 211 bodies of water, including the Mississippi, and 1,000 acres of wetlands as well. This pipeline obviously threatens the health and safety of millions, especially our indigenous neighbors, which is why I continue to urge the Biden administration to pull the permit for Line 3 and continue to work with our governor and state leaders as well. And with that, we will love to take some questions from you and do a quick Q&A. My staff will come around with a mic and take your questions from you.
Just want to do a quick test 1, 2. Okay, audio's working good this time.
It is. There's one right there in red.
Okay.
Thank you all for social distancing, by the way.
Thanks for being here, Rep. I'm Katie. I'm an environmental activist. So on your point about Line 3, I was wondering, what can we do to push the governor further to realize the danger of the pipeline? Or how can we work together to push the governor further?
Yeah, there are lots of ways in which the indigenous communities in northern Minnesota have organized. So I would say follow their leadership. Honor the Earth and other organizations are doing some really important work. We can also connect with you. I think calling and talking to our governor and our lieutenant governor's staff about your reasons for why you think this pipeline should not go through is an important step. You know, we obviously work for you, and hearing directly from you is an important part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, I'm curious if you have thoughts on I was hearing earlier today that Senators Klobuchar and Manchin announced their voting rights compromise legislation. I don't even know if the text of it's been put out, but I'm curious if you have thoughts on how that is and how it's different from HR 1.
Yeah, it is not as comprehensive as HR 1, the For the People legislation that we passed now our second term, but it does do really important stuff. There are voter ID requirements in there that should raise some alarms, but the way that the language is structured is that it's very restrictive voting laws.
I'll have the mic right in front of your, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Judy Sanders, and my friend and I are here with the National Federation of the Blind, and our purpose is to support legislation that promotes opportunities for blind people that we don't currently have. An example of that is our inaccessibility to use medical equipment that is available to everyone else, but blind people can't use it by themselves. So we have a bill to take care of that, and we're wondering, what we'd like to do is to have the opportunity to sit down with you so that you can better understand the obstacles that we face that could be so easily eliminated.
Thank you, Judy. That is a really important point for you to bring up. I think it's really important for us to be able to create accessibility to all kinds of systems for every single person. and I look forward to having a conversation with you. Your friend and I have had many conversations over the years. I had the honor of representing him when I was in the Minnesota House. And so I look forward to sitting down with you and your friend so that we can continue those conversations.
Thank you. My name is Carl Olson. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer, and I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. My concern about the evacuation from Kabul is that the vast majority of the deserving people are interpreters, and their families never made it into the airport. The people who got it into the airport were corrupt, rich elites who bribed their way in. And if you look at their pampered kids, you will agree. I think that we need to do a close screening of the people who actually made it into our country. To make sure that the ones that we want to welcome are welcomed, and the others are not.
For things to be different. Uh, um,
focus on diversity equity
for being here and and um, an issue that is um, close to my heart. My great grandmother and her daughters all had dementia. And, you know, it is something that I acutely understand the impact that it has on families and support systems. And so just again, thank you for continuing to vocalize the importance of us actually creating legislation and investment.
Teacher, and we both, and then community, Cambodian community, thank you very much for the government of Cambodian government accountable for violating human rights and oppression that they been behaved for 36 years. Hun Sen been in the government, so we would ask you to co-sponsor that bill. Thank you very much for your help.
I actually also think that we are a co-sponsor of that bill. Thank you for being here. And, you know, in a few weeks, we, you know, continue to engage with opposition leaders and people who are pushing for a more accountable and transparent government in Cambodia. And so we are actually having few meetings once Congress is back, and we'll update you on that as well.
I'm just wondering, it seems like the, after George Floyd died, that the momentum and the energy that was coming around the Black Lives Matter and other human rights issues, particularly for African Americans, was really heartwarming. And now that seems to be kind of cooling off, and you know, there's actually some pushback. Our armed forces passing, no sense, improvements needed.
Making an really depressing to have had the kind of momentum that was brought about, sadly, because of the murder of George Floyd. And to now sort of have it just be part of history and not, right, still be in the moment, which is what a lot of us had hoped would happen, and that it would actually jolt us into real progress in this country. But I think in many spaces, conversations about justice and public safety for all continues to take place. We introduced the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. There is slow movement in the Senate in trying to negotiate a bill that can be supported by everyone, that would at least have the the creation of some progress in that space. And I think they were sort of going together, right? It was HR 1 and the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, and now that we sort of are done with that negotiation, I think that there is a space for there to be focus on the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. And today we got the news that the ballot measures in Minneapolis in regards to changing the charter is not going to go through. And so that the swing of this pendulum towards justice is quite heartbreaking, right? And it shouldn't be this fast, but it is. And I hope that we don't give up on these conversations in creating a more just society for all of us, in recognizing and seeing the humanity of all of our neighbors, and in continuing to have a city, a state, and a country that protects and uplifts all of us.
In light of the investigations in Rikers Island and Leavenworth Penitentiary of the deplorable conditions that a lot of prisoners are living in, as we work towards creating a world where abolition is more plausible, in the immediate, is there any momentum to try to create an incarcerated Bill of Rights, just to address the specific conditions that people are living in? When you have people that are sitting for 3 months without a court date, you have people that are living in giving plastic bags because their toilets are broken. These are inhumane conditions. So in the immediate, is there anything like an incarcerated Bill of Rights that's coming on the federal level?
Yeah, actually, Ayanna Pressley has a piece of legislation. I think it's called Justice for All, if I'm remembering it correctly. We're also co-sponsor of that, and it is a Bill of Rights for the incarcerated. It sort of repeals a lot of the 1994 crime bill stuff as well. We just also sent a letter to Biden to give clemency to a lot of folks who are incarcerated and deserve to have clemency. And I think that with Ayanna and Corey, there is lots of momentum in these conversations around incarcerated folks. Ayanna Pressley's father was incarcerated for a really long time. Her husband served 10 years, and this has been sort of her passion to try to create a more just system in that regard. So, yeah. So Farah, we can talk separately in ways that you can join that fight with us.
I'm James Brooks, and I just wanted to comment on the importance of the words that we choose. We've just been all exposed to the centennial or the commemoration of 9/11. One thing that I think is important is that we not gloss over the things that don't feel good. Those people who in Guantanamo experienced subhuman treatment are not illegals. They are not revolutionaries until proven to be. They are human beings. They are human beings who are torture victims. Now we've got the newest batch of half-truths looking at the what we're calling the people who are stuck in Afghanistan. They are victims of a number of terrible things, some of which we have taken part in. Those people are not collateral damage, and they are not people to be ignored and minimized in terms of their importance to what we supposedly stand for. I think it's time to risk political backlash and speak the truth about who these people are.
That is true, and you know, I've never been shy of speaking the truth, and I think it's an important part of the work that we do. Yesterday, we actually had the Secretary of State come in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee, which I sit on, and you know, I'm still a junior member on that committee, and the hearing went on for 4 hours before I got to ask my question. Before I got my 5 minutes. Everybody gets a 5 minute on these committees. And I was surprised that not a single member who went before me, and there were dozens on both sides of the aisle, not a single member asked about the drone strike that supposedly killed a terrorist. But in actuality, all of the reporting has shown that it killed an aid worker and his family. And it's astonishing to me, right, that we continue to, again, gloss over the victims of our war on terror. And we continue to speak about collateral damage and the accidental deaths without realizing that they are somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's grandfather, somebody's grandmother, somebody's mother. These are human beings who didn't do anything but wake up that morning or go to sleep that night and found themselves blown to pieces. And at least morally, that should weigh heavily on our conscience as a country, because it is our dollars, it's our tax dollars that continue to pay for these bombs that are attacking people in the middle of the night, of people who we are not engaged in battle. And, you know, it is something we continue to forget. And in regards to Gitmo, we have over 36 people in Gitmo who have not been charged, who have not been convicted, who have been there for nearly 2 decades, who've been tortured, who, you know, have lost their youth. Some of them were put in there in their early 20s and have not had the opportunity to actually live, right, or lead a life at all. And it is torture that they have all experienced. There hasn't been any accountability for that, and there continues to be no accountability for that, which is why I continue to lead the call for closing Gitmo, which is why I continue to lead for there to be accountability for what we have done to people in Gitmo, or in regards to our drone strikes. There are a lot of people who don't appreciate the fact that I lead on these issues. A lot of people tell me, that as a Muslim, as an immigrant in this country, these are not my best things to lead on, because a lot of Americans are already suspicious of me. But I believe the Americans that elected me, the people that I represent, want me to lead on these issues, and they want to have a voice that is honest about who we want to be and who we have been, and finding a way to close the gap in that space. So thank you for raising the crimes that we continue to commit but never talk about.
Hello, my name is Mark. Back to the public safety amendment, of which I got another mailer about yesterday from a certain side that misquotes people. With that news that you had mentioned of it might, I sound like being struck down and not even coming into play. What would you suggest is the next move to advance things? I don't know if it's mayoral election, or what is, instead of waiting another year to try to get it started all over again and run into the same battles. And it, like again was mentioned earlier, anything coming out of what happened last year being one more year away, and it just, the momentum even dying further.
I mean, the leaders who are opposed to progress in the city are not nameless or faceless. So we do have an opportunity in a couple of weeks when early voting begins to make sure that they don't continue to be representing our city and continuing to obstruct the kind of progress that we want. I think that anybody who stands opposed to the efforts that so many people in the city have engaged in, and it was over 20,000 that signed that petition to put the ballot measure forward. And the job was for our municipal leaders to say this was the requirement. They've met the threshold, and this ballot measure should be on the ballot. And using your network to obstruct the kind of progress so many people in the city want and we're looking forward to is not something that should go unnoticed. And I just think it's really important for us to understand that. I mean, this charter amendment, I believe, was an important step for us to be like any other city in Minnesota that doesn't have a requirement of the number of police officers we should have. This was an opportunity for us to be like any other city in Minnesota that doesn't require a police department to be on the charter. This was our opportunity to have flexibility created for the leaders that we elect, because that flexibility doesn't exist with the current charter that we have. And I haven't lived in the city long enough to remember when we didn't have this charter before the 70s. But it doesn't make any sense to me that city of St. Paul, and we're stuck with it. And we have people pouring in so much money to make us enslaved to a charter that majority of us, and so as you can tell, I'm pretty upset about it, and I just, this is the opposite of what democracy should produce. The people had a vision for what they wanted, and there's a judge, there's a mayor, there is a police chief, and their moneyed friends who are telling us we can't have a city that is flexible to our needs and to our demands. How else are we supposed to make progress if we can't do that? And so, yeah.
I want to thank you for your efforts to stop Line 3, the tar sands pipeline coming across Minnesota, northern Minnesota. I know you have been up on the front lines, and you have brought leaders from around the country to support the cause to stop Line 3. It weighs on me, it weighs on my conscience that we Minnesotans have not done enough to stop this. We have let it go on. It keeps on, it's being built, and it's a horrible threat to the environment of the whole country. So thank you for your efforts, and given the larger picture of the environmental crisis that we are witnessing in this country, I wonder what you think that we can do, what we can do to help confront the climate crisis and and get things back to normal.
I mean, you're already doing it. I think it's showing up. It's pressuring those who have the power to legislate, and urging and having conversations with your neighbors and others to be as active in protecting our planet as you have been. One of the Native leaders that we met with said 90% isn't 100%, and the oil isn't inside the pipelines yet. And so it is not too late for us to have an impact in stopping this pipeline. So continue to call the governor, continue to reach out to the president and the administration, continue to call on other representatives here. I think Betty McCollum and myself were the only ones that are supporting stopping the pipeline, and I think more engagement is needed to get others to be on board. And so there is still a lot of time for us to do something. And so let's keep going. Now I can't tell if people are just shooing away bugs or raising their hands.
Hi there. As a fiance of a Chinese woman living in Hong Kong right now, observing Sino-American relations falteringly continue along Trump's stances, I'm wondering when flying between our countries is going to be traded between the two countries in order to see my partner, and what's being done about that.
I'm actually not sure what's being done about that. This is, I think, the first time that question has come up. We will look into what the timeline is in opening up travel into different countries. I know that there was a lot of hope and a lot of progress being made a couple of months ago until the Delta variant came into our lives and sort of obstructed, I think, every plan that we had in our heads for a post-pandemic life. And so I will see if there is some guidelines that are being formulated for travel to some of the countries that have the strictest travels. Don't be shy. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank you for doing this and spreading the word yesterday on Twitter, and I appreciate your responding to your constituents.
Carl, I don't think you know how excited I am to be here. As an extreme extrovert, I have hated every single virtual live stream that we have done. I've asked my staff to figure out ways they can get people to join so I could see their faces. So it's really exciting to be able to actually see you all and engage and interact. And yeah, I just hope that we are able to continue to do this. I wanted next month's town hall to be in Northeast at a park, and I was reminded by my staff that we live in Minnesota and it's probably gonna be cold. And this might be the last one that we might be able to do in an open space like this. So pray that things get a little better in regards to COVID so that we can at least do it in person, indoors somewhere. Questions, comments?
I'm sorry, a follow-up on that. My question was not about opening up about coronavirus safety indications. It was about the normalization of Sino-American relations right now as Hong Kong is literally being conquered. What America's stance is likely to be as far as pursuing human rights in Hong Kong, pursuing protections for Hong Kong Constitution, and pursuing the right of independent nation to self-govern.
Okay. So one thing has been really frustrating for me, and you might notice it in the hearings on the Foreign Affairs Committee or anytime I speak about our foreign policy, is that we will have an administration, a Secretary of State, a president who will say, we are a country that is guided by the principles of holding up human rights. We are a country that is going to advance the rule of law. We are a country that is going to hold other countries accountable, that we support democracies, we care for transparency and accountability, and they never say the buts. And so you spend a lot of time thinking that these people have said these things and they actually mean it, which is oftentimes to the contrary. And it is to the contrary because we have policy that is grounded in regards to our foreign policy that is we only care about these things, these A, B, and C things that I've forementioned, if they advance our foreign interests. And so in regards to China, in many ways, there are some challenges, right? And so the way in which we engage with China is driven by the kind of collaborations we want to have with them and how much we are willing to upset China by our policy stances. And so we haven't been able to formulate a very coherent policy in regards to Hong Kong. We haven't really given peace of mind to Taiwan. We haven't been able to fully address with what's happening to the Uyghurs in China. We haven't been able to cultivate a coalition of international allies or even encouraged those that share borders with China to be on our side in regards to advancing human rights with China and others. So it's complicated. But there is obviously a cohort, not a small cohort, of members in Congress, both in the House and the Senate, that continue to advocate for a thriving democracy, for prosperity, for transparency and accountability, and for the ability for people to dissent without being brutalized in Hong Kong. And so we will continue to push for that to be even louder and have it be a priority for this administration. Questions?
Hello, my name is Justin Niska, and I'm a student at the University of Minnesota. And I work with an organization called Swipe Out Hunger, and one of the things that we do is try to alleviate hunger crises on campus. But the most recent data that we have is 1 in 4 students are food insecure on campus, and that can be a barrier to higher education. When you look farther upstream, one of the things that can farther upstream from that, not just food insecurity, is also housing insecurity, not just around the University of Minnesota, but also throughout the state and the nation. I was wondering what would, is anything being done or what could be done by us and by you and your team in Washington to help solve some of these problems?
Yes, there are state initiatives in the state legislature and obviously initiatives in Congress to holistically address, right, the cost that's associated with higher education. And in the Education and Labor Committee, our conversations have they've expanded beyond books and others, things like that, to housing insecurity, mental health needs, and obviously the growing food insecurity. There is legislation to allow SNAP access to college students, and other policies like that. I can provide a whole, I can have my staff provide a whole list of things that are being proposed so that you all can help advocate on a federal level. And there's similar pieces of legislation that are moving here in our state legislature as well. Is that Gretchen? the City of Minneapolis Health Department Director. How are you? Good to see you. Any other questions? Okay. There's a blue shirt back there.
Okay. Hi, Representative Omar. Thank you for your time. I maybe talked about this earlier. What is your opinion on mask mandates, vaccination requirements, things like this? It doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Since we are timed, anyone else have a question? No? Okay. I mean, it is in a way, has felt like a silly conversation in regards to the debate that's happening around the vaccine, and whether it is against like our freedoms and liberty to get to be required to be vaccinated. It's as if people have forgotten all of the vaccines we are required we have been required to be able to go to school, all the vaccine requirements we have in order to travel to some countries, and the military has a lot of vaccine requirements in order for you to join. And to me, we have a public health pandemic, and it is deadly. My own father died last June from COVID, and I supported the mask mandate when the governor first got his emergency powers, and they were, going back and forth on it. And my dad was unlucky to have gotten caught up in those, moments where it was still being decided and debated whether masks should be worn. And it is sad, actually, in so many ways, because my father literally flew from Kenya because he thought that the pandemic would be much more regulated and under control in the United States, and that he would have access to treatment much more superior than in Kenya. And shockingly, majority of the world's deaths due to COVID have happened in the United States. Right? Over 1 million people have died around the world. due to COVID, and over 600,000 of them have died here in the United States, the country that everybody around the world probably expected would be the safest place to deal with a public health pandemic. And so it is embarrassing, actually. And I feel sad for people who want to play politics with other people's health, who want to play politics with other people's lives. Because nobody would say, you chose not to get vaccinated, you chose not to wear a mask, you chose to pray to God instead of listening and getting health advice. So when you get COVID, then you should stay home and continue to pray to God. You shouldn't fill up, right, our hospitals so that the people who actually did everything they could get the treatment they need. You should do that with your kids when they get it. You should do that with your parents when they get it. But people aren't doing that. And a lot of these politicians have gotten vaccinated themselves. They have vaccinated their children. Right? A lot of everybody who's working in places where there is already a requirement for you to get vaccinated is vaccinated, but they continue to tell people that that it's bad that these requirements exist. And so, yeah, I think everybody should get vaccinated. I think if you are not in a place where they're checking your temperature and you are not required, they're not requiring a vaccine, a show of your vaccination record, then you should wear a mask. And, you know, I have 4 kids. 3 of my kids are between 15 and 18. They are all vaccinated. As soon as it came through, I got all of them vaccinated. I have a 9-year-old. She's so afraid that even when we walk to the park, she wears her mask. And it is not okay. It is not okay for us to be in one of the most advanced countries in the world technologically and have this many people die. It's not okay. So again, get vaccinated, wear a mask. Please save your life and the lives of everyone in our community. It is really important. It is hard to have, you know, we say cancer robs people of life too soon, but there is nothing like getting COVID and dying within 2 weeks, which is what happened to my dad. I didn't get to hug him. I didn't get to be by his side. I didn't get to do nothing. And this man, every moment in my life, even through childbirth, sat next to me every single moment. And that was robbed of me. And I refuse to entertain and acknowledge people who don't understand just how sad that is and how it is avoidable. So get vaccinated, wear your mask, please care for each other. Love you, thank you so much. It's an honor to represent you and it's an honor to spend time with you.